I'm here talking with Michael Goldstein. He has founded something that I think is pretty cool. It's called the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So tell me about the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute.
Yeah, so it was founded by me, my friends Pierre Rochard and Daniel Krauwitz last month, and the reason we founded it is we felt that in the Bitcoin community there was a large lacking of understanding of the history of ideas that Bitcoin came from, namely the cypherpunk and crypto-anarchist movement. So a lot of people know about Bitcoin, but they think it sort of just kind of sprung up out of nowhere. Satoshi just showed up and made it. But it's actually built on ideas that have extended back to the 60s, but especially ideas that came out in the 80s, like David Chaum, and later on Timothy May and the Cyphernomicon.
What did they do?
Oh, well, David Chaum proposed ways to create anonymous remailers for anonymous messaging online, as well as untraceable digital cash. So we really started that. And Tim May's Cyphernomicon took this idea of public key cryptography and tried to think about, what are all the social implications of it? And he imagined all sorts of decentralized communities that are based on sort of reputation and as opposed to, the force of government.
So there's a lot of ideas there that maybe people aren't so aware of, is that right?
Yeah, so for instance, I believe it was 1998, cryptographer Wei Dai came out with a proposal on the cypherpunk mailing list called B-Money, and it happens to be pretty much Bitcoin. It describes a protocol that is very similar to what we now know of as Bitcoin, but this was a full decade earlier.
Wow, maybe the world wasn't ready for it yet at that time.
No, maybe not, or maybe not ready to actually implement it, or people actually have to get up and code these great ideas that people come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I know there were a lot of ideas that were maybe almost precursors to Bitcoin, like hash cash and e-gold, gold money, that kind of thing. Have you talked about those too?
Yes, so actually, so we have a preview site up and we have a bunch of primary sources up, and actually Adam Beck's hash cash paper is on there, and that was originally developed as a way to prevent email spam, because you would have to generate a proof of work to show that you're not a spammer, because then it would make it too costly to be sending out all these fake emails and stuff. But then Satoshi used that in Bitcoin mining, proof of work to do mining, to make sure that there weren't, so you could generate consensus on blocks.
Wow, okay, so it sounds like the sort of ancestors of the Bitcoin movement, it sounds like they were really ideologically driven in terms of wanting a freer world. Would you say that was accurate?
Very much so. In fact, the very first paragraph of the B-Money proposal says nothing about money, but instead talks about his praise for Timothy May's visions of crypto anarchy, and then proceeds to say that having a decentralized digital currency is an integral component of people being able to create these voluntary communities in the digital space. And then goes on to talk about the money.
I see. So the ideas are really foundational to it. And so if somebody has never heard the term crypto anarchy before and they're listening to this podcast and they're like, what is that? How would you define crypto anarchy? What's that?
So I see crypto anarchy as not so much a philosophy in and of itself, but a strategy for creating a freer world. So it's very much libertarian. Timothy May described it as a form of anarcho-capitalism. But what it's recognizing is using the power of cryptography, you can create protocols that are simply unbreakable by brute force. So for instance, the government could keep people from being able to physically talk to one another. However, if they're able to set up cryptographic protocols where they can send secret messages that only they and the people they wish to interact with can understand, no amount of computing power can break this. And so basically you're protecting this freedom of association with mathematics, and you simply cannot point a gun at a math equation and tell it to solve itself.
Yeah, I've heard that line before. Do you know where that comes from?
I personally got it from Trace Mayer, but it's a common saying, I think.
Yeah, it reminds me of that joke where there's a farmer and the government bureaucrat comes onto the farm to inspect the farm. And the farmer says, okay, you can inspect the farm, but just don't go in the pen with the bull. And he says, well, I will have you know I'm from the federal government and I'll go wherever I want. And the farmer says, okay, and he shows him his badge, and he says, look, I've got my badge. And the farmer says, all right, go ahead. And then he goes in the pen with the bull, and a few minutes later, the bull's chasing him out of the farm, and the farmer says, show him your badge. And it's right, you can't point a gun at a math equation and make it solve itself. There's absolutely nothing that anybody could do.
Yeah, exactly, and so... things like PGP, where this also came from the same broad cypherpunk movement, and that gave people the ability to send messages that simply cannot be broken by government. And in fact,
what is a cypherpunk?
The cypherpunk, that was just Timothy May, Eric Hughes, and I believe John Gilmore formed a group in California in the early 90s, and they just got together and they'd talk about cryptography, and they'd play some cryptographic-based games and stuff. And it later became a mailing list, a very popular one, where people were sharing all these grand ideas, protocols, and also implementations of the protocols. And someone had called it the cypherpunks. Cipher coming from a cryptographic cipher.
Uh-huh. And does it have kind of punk rock, do-it-yourself kind of roots of that kind too?
One of the maxims of the cypherpunks was cypherpunks write code. That's saying you can sit around and talk about these things, but ultimately someone has to get down, and the person who will truly make change in the society is the one who sits down and codes something that gives people this new cryptographic power.
So as Bitcoin adoption grows, there are going to be more people who are interested in Bitcoin but aren't necessarily aware of all the history that goes behind it or the philosophy that goes behind it. So is that what you're trying to do with the Nakamoto Institute, is educate people more about the foundational kinds of ideas? And how are you doing that?
Yes, that's a very large component of it. As well, these people... a lot of these ideas are very new to them. Bitcoin and crypto anarchy, I learned about them about the same time, and so they very much go hand in hand. And I think understanding the roots of Bitcoin allows you to understand where Bitcoin came from and why it was created. And furthermore, this lends you the ability to understand the principles of Bitcoin, and that is, it's strictly a more kind of anarchistic style of doing something. And I know that might scare some people, but hopefully if they read more, they'll learn how beautiful of a proposition that actually is.
So what do you think about all the trends recently where people are kind of saying, oh, well, how can we please the regulators? How can we pay taxes on our Bitcoins?
Well, so I think, once again, if they understood the cypherpunk roots of Bitcoin, they would understand that, cypherpunks didn't want to simply hide from government. They wanted to make the government irrelevant. They wanted to create protocols that allowed people to completely disregard certain legacy institutions and state apparatuses.
Okay, so what does the Nakamoto Institute do in order to foster that goal of education?
So, like I said, currently we have a preview site, and we're going to be working on a full-blown site. And mostly, for now, it's going to be primary resources. So you can find all of these great works in one location, hopefully with some commentary to help you along the way. Some of the cryptographic stuff can be a little more difficult to understand. We're hoping to have one of our top priorities is to have a part of the site dedicated to Satoshi Nakamoto, to have the complete Satoshi, where people can find his original mailing list posts where he introduced Bitcoin to the world, all of his Bitcoin talk posts, his white paper, and any sort of other writings we might be able to find. And once again, hopefully find ways to kind of annotate it and guide people through all the ideas so they can better understand it.
So this has nothing to do with attempting to identify Satoshi, right?
No, I mean, it's a fun question to ask, and I have my thoughts on who it could possibly be, but this is more just a broad celebration of the history of these crypto anarchist ideas and the cypherpunk movement and Bitcoin as well. And if we happen to come across who Satoshi is, that might be fun to know. But that's not what we're seeking.
Are you operating sort of as a nonprofit educational organization, and how are you funding this project?
So currently we're just kind of paying out our own pockets right now. We have a QR code on our website if anyone wants to donate Bitcoins only, please.
And what's your website?
NakamotoInstitute.org. But we are a pending 501c3 organization. So your Bitcoin donations will be tax deductible, hopefully, in the future.
Gotcha. Wow, that'll be interesting sending that application to the IRS.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they will enjoy reading that.
Great. Okay, Michael, thanks so much for talking with me today. So NakamotoInstitute.org, is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Purse.io is a gift exchange that helps you shop on Amazon with Bitcoins and at a 6% discount. How does it work? You create an Amazon wish list, share it with Purse.io, and deposit Bitcoin equivalent to the cost of your item. You'll soon receive your item in the mail, purchased for you by someone who gets your Bitcoin in return. You must try this new service. Let's Talk Bitcoin listeners will even receive additional rewards. Visit Purse.io.